Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. Tonight, we dive into Arthur Machen's chilling tale, the novel of the White Powder. This version has been carefully reimagined and rewritten to bring its suspense and horror alive for modern audiences. Prepare yourself for a journey into corruption, mystery, and dread. My name is Leicester. My father, Major General Wynne Leicester, once a proud artillery officer, met his end 5 years ago, his body undone by a cruel liver disease born of India's deadly climate. A year later, my brother Francis returned home, his brilliance at the university already the talk of many. Yet instead of basking in triumph, he chose the solitude of a hermit, determined to conquer what scholars call the great legend of the law. Handsome, witty, capable of laughter as bright as any vagabond's, he shunned society. He locked himself away in the high chamber of our house, burying 10 hours a day in his books. From dawn's first light until dusk he labored, pausing only for a hurried meal, as if every moment stolen from study were a sin. I worried. Such relentless toil could not go unpunished. I urged him toward rest, even a harmless novel or a walk in the fresh air. He only laughed, claiming feudal tenures amused him more than theaters or holidays. At first, he seemed untouched by the strain, but I knew the body exacts its revenge. Soon, shadows gathered beneath his eyes. He grew pale, restless, haunted. He confessed to dizziness, to nights broken by dreadful dreams, waking drenched in icy sweat. Still, he insisted he was fine, assuring me he had spent an afternoon idling in the chair I had given him, scribbling nonsense on paper. "I will not overdo it," he said. "I shall be well in a week or two." But I saw the truth. His face grew lined and despondent, his movements sharp with nervous irritation, his glances strange and unreadable. Fear gnawed at me. At last, against his will, I persuaded him to summon our old doctor, though he did so with a bitterness that chilled me. Dr. Haberden examined Francis and tried to reassure me. "There is nothing serious," he insisted. "Your brother simply studies too hard, eats too quickly, and rushes back to his books without pause. The result is a touch of indigestion and some strain upon the nerves. A prescription will set it right. You need not worry." Francis, stubborn as ever, insisted the medicine be prepared by a small, antiquated chemist nearby. The shop was no glittering modern apothecary, but a dim, old-fashioned place, its shelves lined with jars that seemed untouched by time. Francis trusted the man's purity of craft, and so the powder arrived. It looked harmless enough. White grains that vanished into a glass of cold water, leaving it clear and innocent. He took it faithfully after meals, and at first the change was remarkable. The weariness lifted from his face, his spirits brightened, and he spoke with a gaiety I had not heard since his school days. "Too many hours wasted on law," he laughed. "You've saved me just in time. I shall be Lord Chancellor yet, but I must not forget life. We'll take a holiday, you and I. Paris awaits us, far from the dusty tones of the Bibliothèque Nationale."
His cheer was infectious. I asked when we should go. "The day after tomorrow, if you wish." He shook his head with a smile. "Too soon. I must first taste the pleasures of London before I cross the Channel. But in a week or two, yes. Prepare your French. Mine is only the language of law, and that will not serve us well." That evening, as we finished dinner, he raised the glass of medicated water high, drinking it with the flourish of a man toasting fine wine. I watched him, uneasy, and asked quietly, Does it have any taste at all?" "No, it tastes like nothing at all," Francis said lightly, rising from his chair. He paced the room, restless, as though uncertain what impulse might seize him next. "Shall we have coffee in the drawing-room?" I asked, "or perhaps a smoke?" He shook his head. "No, I'll take a walk. The evening is too strange to waste indoors. Look at the sky. It burns like a city in flames, and between the darkened houses it seems as though blood is falling from the clouds. Yes, I'll go out. Perhaps I'll be back soon, but I'll take my key. Good night, dear, if I don't return." The door slammed, and I watched him stride down the street, cane swinging, his step unnervingly light. Gratitude stirred in me. Dr. Haberden's medicine seemed to have worked wonders. Francis returned late, but the next morning he was radiant. "I wandered without aim," he told me, breathing the night air, carried along by the crowds until I reached the brighter quarters of the city. There I met Orford, an old friend from college. We laughed, we drank, we lived. For the first time I felt blood in my veins, as other men do. Tonight I join him again. There will be a party, a feast, a midnight of chimes. And afterward you and I shall take our trip together. In mere days, my brother was transformed. He became a creature of pleasure, haunting restaurants, chasing music and dance, delighting in every indulgence London could offer. His body grew heavier, his laughter louder, and Paris was forgotten. He had found his paradise here, and yet something in his gaiety unsettled me. Beneath the merriment, I sensed a shadow. Slowly, the change deepened. He still returned in the cold hours before dawn, but spoke no more of his revels. Then one morning at breakfast, I looked into his eyes and saw a stranger staring back. "Francis, Francis, what have you done?" My voice broke into sobs. I fled the room, for though I knew nothing, I knew everything. In my mind, the memory of that first evening returned, the sunset sky blazing like a city consumed by fire, and the crimson rain falling fast.
I tried to silence my fears, convincing myself that perhaps no real harm had been done. That evening, over dinner, I resolved to press Francis about our long-promised holiday in Paris. He had just taken his medicine, and we spoke easily enough, until suddenly the words I meant to say dissolved, smothered by a weight that pressed upon my chest. It was the suffocating terror of a coffin lid nailed shut upon the living. We dined without candles, the room sinking from twilight into shadow. The corners blurred, the walls faded, and beyond the window the sky began to glow. I remembered another evening, and once more the heavens flared with dreadful majesty. Clouds twisted like burning cities, smoke rising in gray billows, tongues of fire lashing upward, and below it all a vast pool of crimson, as though blood itself had gathered in the depths. I turned to Francis. His hand lay upon the table, and between his thumb and forefinger I saw a mark, small, round, the size of a coin. At first it seemed a bruise, but instinct told me otherwise. If flesh could burn with flame, and if flame could be black as pitch, then such was the horror branded upon his skin. The vision overwhelmed me. For a moment the fiery sky went black as midnight, and when light returned, I found myself alone in the silent room. Soon after, I heard my brother leave the house. Though it was late, I hurried to Dr. Haberden. In his dim consulting room, lit only by the flicker of a single candle, I poured out everything: my brother's illness, the medicine, and the dreadful mark I had seen. My voice faltered, breaking against the tide of fear.
When I finished, the doctor regarded me in silence, his face heavy with pity. "My dear Miss Leicester," the doctor said gently, "you have been worrying yourself over your brother. Surely that is the case." "I have indeed," I admitted. "For weeks now I have felt no peace." "Quite natural," he replied. "The brain is a strange thing, prone to tricks of perception. That sunset tonight was extraordinary. You stared at it too long, and your imagination did the rest. Tomorrow you will see matters more clearly. Still, remember, I am always at your service should you need me." I left his house with little comfort, my heart heavy with confusion and dread. The next morning, when Francis and I met, my eyes fell instantly upon his right hand. It was bound in a handkerchief, the very hand where I had seen the mark like black fire. "What happened to your hand, Francis?" I asked, forcing steadiness into my voice. "Nothing serious," he said lightly. "I cut a finger last night, and it bled more than I expected. I bandaged it myself."
"Let me dress it properly for you," I offered. "No, no," he smiled. "This will do. Come, let us have breakfast. I am hungry." But he scarcely touched his food. I watched him push meat toward the dog when he thought I wasn't looking. His eyes, there was something in them I had never seen before, something not quite human. The horror of what I had witnessed the night before returned with certainty. It had not been illusion. That evening, I went again to Dr. Haberdin. He listened, frowning, his expression troubled. "And you say he continues with the medicine? Strange. His symptoms vanished long ago. Why persist with the powder? And where was it prepared? At Sace's? I never send patients there. The old man has grown careless. Come with me. We shall speak to him directly." Together, we walked to the chemist's shop. Old Sace greeted the doctor warmly, ready to answer whatever questions might be asked. "You've been sending this powder to Mr. Leicester for some weeks, I believe," Dr. Haberdin said, handing the chemist a slip of paper. The old man adjusted his thick spectacles with trembling fingers. Yes, I have. There's very little left. It's not a common drug. I've had it in stock for years. If Mr. Leicester continues, I'll need to order more." "Let me see it," Haberdin demanded. The chemist produced a small glass bottle. The doctor removed the stopper, inhaled, and his expression darkened. "Where did you obtain this? What is it?" "For one thing, Mr. Sace, this is not what I prescribed. The label may be correct, but the contents are not." The chemist faltered, pale with fear. "I bought it long ago, from Burbage's. It is rarely asked for, so it has sat upon my shelf. You see, there is little remaining." "Give it to me," Haberdin said grimly. "Something is very wrong." We left the shop in silence, the doctor carrying the bottle wrapped beneath his arm. His face was clouded, his eyes heavy with unease. "Dr. Haberdin," I whispered as we walked. "Yes?" he answered gloomily. "Tell me, what has my brother been swallowing twice a day for the past month?" "Frankly, Miss Leicester, I do not know. We will speak of it at my house." There he paced the room, his features shadowed by uncommon fear. "This is strange indeed. Put aside, if you will, the visions you described. But the fact remains, your brother has been saturating his body with a substance utterly unknown to me. It is not what I ordered. What it truly is, we must discover." He unwrapped the bottle, tipped a few grains of the white powder onto paper, and bent close. "Yes, it resembles quinine, flaky in texture. But smell it." The doctor held the bottle toward me, and I bent close. A foul, vaporous stench rose from it, sweet and sickly, yet suffocating like the breath of some powerful anesthetic. "I shall have it analyzed," Haberden said gravely. "A colleague of mine has devoted his life to chemistry. He will know. But speak no more of that other matter. Banish it from your mind." That evening, Francis did not leave the house. "My revels are over," he laughed strangely. "I must return to my old ways. A little law will be a welcome rest after so sharp a dose of pleasure." He grinned to himself and retired upstairs, his hand still bound in its rough bandage. Days later, Haberden returned. "I have no news," he admitted. "Chambers is away, so I know no more of the powder than you do. But I should like to see Mr. Leicester. Perhaps we have made too much of this. After all, whatever the substance may be, it seems to have done him good." He ascended to Francis's room. I waited below in the hushed house, the silence deepening as the clock crept forward. An hour passed. Then came the sharp slam of a door above, and footsteps descending. I saw my own face pale in the mirror as Haberden entered. Horror blazed in his eyes. He clutched the back of a chair for support, his lip trembling, his voice broken. "I have seen him," he whispered hoarsely. "I sat in his presence for an hour. My God, and I am still alive, still sane. I have dealt with death all my life, with the crumbling ruins of the human frame, but not this. Not this." He covered his face with his hands, as though to blot out the vision that still burned before him. "Do not send for me again, Miss Leicester," the doctor said at last, his voice steadier but hollow. "I can do nothing here. Goodbye." I watched him stagger down the steps, his figure bent, his pace slow. In that single day, he seemed to have aged 10 years. Francis remained locked in his room. His voice, strange and unfamiliar, called down that he was busy, that meals should be left at his door. From then on, time itself seemed to dissolve. I lived in a haze of dread, moving through the house like a ghost, speaking only when necessary, my thoughts forever circling that closed door above. Sometimes I wandered the streets, only to return again, my spirit waiting, trembling for the door to open. Days blurred into nights, nights into days. Perhaps a fortnight passed. One evening, returning from a walk, I felt lighter, soothed by the sweetness of the air, the drifting green haze of leaves, the perfume of blossoms. For a moment, I was almost happy. I paused at the pavement, waiting for a van to pass, and glanced up at the windows of the house. In that instant, terror struck me like a flood. My ears roared with the rush of dark waters. My heart plunged into a hollow abyss. The world tilted, the stones beneath my feet seemed to sway, and I reached out blindly to keep from falling. The blind of Francis's study window had been drawn aside. Something alive stared out. Not a face, not anything human. Only 2 eyes, burning like flames, set within a shape too formless to name. It was corruption made flesh, the embodiment of evil itself. I stood frozen, shuddering, sick with loathing and fear, unable to move for long minutes. At last, staggering inside, I rushed upstairs and hammered at my brother's door. "Francis! Francis!" I cried, my voice breaking. "For heaven's sake, answer me! What is that horror in your room? Drive it out! Cast it away!" From within came the sound of shuffling feet, slow and awkward, followed by a choking, gurgling struggle, as though speech itself were a torment. At last, a voice, broken, muffled, scarcely human, whispered, "There is nothing here. Do not disturb me. I am not well today." I recoiled, helpless, knowing he lied. I had seen too clearly the thing beyond the glass to be deceived. And in that instant of memory, another image returned, something I had glimpsed before those burning eyes transfixed me. The blind had been drawn back not by a hand, not by fingers, but by a blackened stump. A rotting outline, clumsy as a beast's paw, had pushed the fabric aside. That vision was carved into my mind forever. Horror consumed me. I cried again at his door, but no answer came. Later that night, a servant whispered to me. For 3 days, food had been left at Francis's door, untouched. The maid had knocked, but heard only the same shuffling steps I had noticed. Day after day passed. Meals remained untouched. My knocking, my pleading, brought no reply. The servants grew restless, their fear mirroring mine. The cook confessed that in the early nights of his confinement, she had heard him wandering the house, even the hall door opening and closing. But now, silence. For several nights, not a sound.
The climax came at last. Dusk had fallen, and I sat alone in the dim, oppressive room when a shriek tore through the silence, harsh, piercing, unnatural. A rush of footsteps thundered down the stairs, and moments later the servant maid stumbled in, pale and shaking. "Miss Helen," she gasped, "for the Lord's sake, look at my hand." I drew her to the window. A black, wet stain spread across her skin. "I do not understand," I whispered. "Your room," she stammered. "I was turning down the bedclothes when something fell upon me, wet, dripping. I looked up, and the ceiling was black, oozing, raining down on me." A chill seized me. "Come," I said, "bring your candle." We entered my chamber beneath Francis's. The ceiling was blotched with a spreading black patch, drops of foul moisture clinging to it, and below the bed was soaked with a pool of hideous liquid. I fled upstairs, pounding on my brother's door. "Francis, Francis, my dear brother, what has happened to you?" From within came only the sound of choking, of liquid bubbling and gurgling, as though some monstrous thing struggled to breathe. No words, no answer. Defying Dr. Haberden's warning, I went to him, tears streaming. I told him everything. His face hardened, grim and pale. "For your father's sake," he said at last, "I will go with you, though I fear I can do nothing." We walked together through the suffocating streets, the air heavy with heat and drought. Beneath the gas lamps, his face was white, his hand trembling. At the house, we did not hesitate. We climbed the stairs, I holding the lamp, while the doctor called out in a firm, commanding voice, "Mr. Leicester, do you hear me? I insist on seeing you. Answer at once." There was no reply, only that dreadful sound, the choking, the bubbling, the regurgitation of something no longer human.
"Mr. Leicester, I am waiting. Open this door at once, or I shall break it down." The doctor's voice rang through the house, echoing against the walls. He called again, louder, more commanding. "For the last time, I order you to open." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. At last Haberden muttered grimly, "We are wasting time. Fetch me a tool, something heavy." I ran to the back room and returned with a brutal adze, its iron head glinting in the lamplight. "That will serve," he said. Then, at the keyhole, he cried, "Mr. Leicester, I give you notice. I am about to break in." The adze tore into the wood, splinters flew, the frame cracked, and with a final wrench the door crashed open. From the darkness within erupted a scream, no human cry, but the roar of some monstrous thing, raw and inarticulate, striking at us with sound alone. "Hold the lamp," the doctor commanded. Together we stepped inside. "There," Haberden gasped, pointing to the corner. I followed his gaze, and horror seared through me like molten iron. Upon the floor wreathed a mass of corruption, neither flesh nor fluid, but a rotting, shifting heap that bubbled like boiling pitch. From its midst glared two burning points, eyes alive with dreadful fire. Limbs stirred within the decay, and something rose, lifting what might once have been an arm. With a cry of loathing, the doctor advanced. He raised the iron bar high and struck at the eyes, driving the weapon deep. Again and again he struck, fury and revulsion guiding his blows, until the horror lay still. Weeks later, when I had regained some measure of composure, Haberden visited me. His face was weary, his voice resigned. "I have sold my practice," he said. "Tomorrow I sail on a long voyage. Perhaps I shall never return to England. Most likely I will settle in California, far from this place. I leave you this packet. Inside is Dr. Chambers's report on the substance we examined. Read it when you are able. Goodbye, Miss Leicester. Goodbye."
When the doctor had gone, I could not resist. I tore open the envelope and began to read. Inside was a manuscript, a letter from Dr. Chambers. "My dear Haberden," it began, "I have delayed far too long in answering your questions about the white substance you sent me. The truth is, I hesitated. Science, like theology, has its orthodoxies, its rigid prejudices. To speak plainly risks offending them. Yet I must be honest. You have known me for many years as a man of science. Together we have laughed at the charlatans of the occult, the mesmerists, the spiritualists, the conjurers of shabby parlors. We agreed that truth lies only in experiment, in observation, in the material world. And yet, I must confess, I am no longer a materialist. Long ago I convinced myself, skeptic though I was, that the old iron-bound theory is false. The senses are not the final walls of knowledge. Beyond them lies mystery. Even the most respected chemists and biologists now admit it. Trace any branch of human knowledge to its source, and it dissolves into the unknown. Omnia exunt in mysterium. Everything ends in mystery. I will not weary you with the long path that led me here. A few simple experiments planted doubt, and from those small beginnings, my old conception of the universe collapsed. I now stand in a world as strange and boundless as an ocean glimpsed for the first time from a mountain peak. The walls of sense, those barriers we thought eternal, are no walls at all. They are thin veils, dissolving like morning mist before the seeker's gaze. You, Haberden, never embraced the crude extremes of materialism, but I know these words will jar against your habits of thought. Yet what I tell you is truth, verified, undeniable. The universe is more splendid, more terrible than we ever dreamed. All creation is a vast sacrament, a hidden force clothed in matter. Man, the stars, the grass beneath our feet, even the crystal in a test tube, all are bound to the same inner working, spiritual as much as material. From this standpoint, the impossible becomes possible. Legends and beliefs we dismissed as fables must be reconsidered. Science itself, in its hypocrisy, already concedes as much. Witchcraft is forbidden, yet hypnotism is permitted. Ghosts are ridiculed, yet telepathy is debated. Call superstition by a Greek name, and suddenly it is respectable. Such is the irony of our age.
So much for my explanation. You sent me, Haberden, a sealed vial containing a small quantity of flaky white powder. I am not surprised your analysis failed. This substance is no ordinary drug. It was known to a few centuries ago, but I never imagined it would resurface from the shelves of a modern apothecary. The chemist's account is likely true. He obtained the uncommon salt you prescribed, stored it, and left it untouched for decades. Yet chance and coincidence have worked upon it. Year after year, exposed to subtle variations of temperature, the salt underwent a transformation, a process so intricate, so delicate, that even the most advanced instruments of modern science could scarcely reproduce it. What you sent me is not the medicine you intended. It is something far older, far more sinister. It is the powder from which the infamous vinum sabbati, the wine of the Sabbath, was prepared. You have read, no doubt, of the witches' Sabbath, and laughed at tales of broomsticks and black cats. But those grotesque fables served a purpose. They concealed truths too dangerous to be widely known. The real Sabbath was no carnival of superstition. It was a survival of an ancient, evil science, knowledge that predates the arrival of Aryan man in Europe. Men and women, lured from their homes under false pretenses, were led by beings who played the part of devils. They were taken to desolate places known only to the initiated, places hidden by tradition and secrecy. There the rites were performed, and the wine of the Sabbath was consumed. That powder, Haberden, is the remnant of those rites. It is the key to corruption, the sacrament of decay. Perhaps it was a cave upon some wind-swept hill, or a hidden recess deep within a forest. There, in the blackest hour of night, the Sabbath was held. The vinum sabbati, the wine of the Sabbath, was prepared, a vile draught poured forth and offered to the initiates. They drank, and in that moment partook of an infernal sacrament, a chalice of the prince of the pit. And suddenly each who had swallowed found himself attended by a companion, an alluring presence, radiant with unearthly glamour, beckoning him aside to pleasures sharper than any dream, to the consummation of the marriage of the Sabbath.
It is dreadful to write of such things, for that shape of beauty was no illusion. Awful as it is to confess, it was the man himself. By the power of that wine, by a few grains of white powder dissolved in water, the house of life was torn apart, the human trinity shattered. The worm that sleeps within us all was awakened, made flesh, clothed in corruption. And at midnight the primal fall was enacted anew, the forbidden act veiled in the myth of Eden, repeated in horror. Such was the nuptia sabbati. I will say no more. You, Haberden, know as well as I that the smallest laws of life cannot be broken without consequence. And for this act, in which the innermost sanctuary of the soul was defiled, vengeance followed. What began in corruption ended in corruption. Beneath this, in Haberden's own hand, was written,
The whole of the above is, alas, entirely true. Your brother confessed all to me that morning when I saw him in his room. My attention was first drawn to his bandaged hand, and I forced him to reveal it. What I beheld sickened me, though I am a physician hardened by years of practice. The tale he told was more frightful than I could have imagined. It has shaken my faith in eternal goodness that nature should permit such hideous possibilities. Had you not seen the end with your own eyes, I would have urged you to disbelieve it all. My own days are numbered. I have not many weeks left. But you are young and may yet forget. Joseph Haberden, M.D. Months later, word reached me that Dr. Haberden had died at sea, scarcely beyond the shores of England. Miss Leicester's voice faltered, and she looked at Dyson with a weary, almost pleading expression. He fumbled for words, stammering his sympathy, before recovering himself enough to say, "Forgive me, Miss Leicester. You mentioned you were in some difficulty, and that I might assist you." She sighed. "Yes, I had almost forgotten. My present trouble seems so small beside the horrors I have just recounted. Yet, since you are kind enough to listen, I will continue.
You may scarcely believe it, but certain relatives of mine, driven by sordid motives, pretended to suspect that I had murdered my brother. Imagine it! I found myself watched, spied upon, followed in the streets, observed even in my own home. With my spirit, I could not endure such indignity, so I devised a plan. I assumed this disguise, and for a time I lay hidden, unsuspected. But now I fear the pursuit has begun again. Yesterday, I believe I saw the detective assigned to shadow me." Dyson leaned forward. "Describe him." "He is youngish, dark, with whiskers. He wears large spectacles, hoping to conceal himself, but his nervous manner betrays him. His eyes dart constantly, quick glances to right and left." Dyson shifted uneasily. The description was too vivid, too precise. His patience frayed, and though propriety restrained him, he longed to curse aloud in the fashion of centuries past. "Excuse me, Miss Leicester," Dyson said stiffly, his voice edged with cold politeness. "I cannot assist you." She looked at him with sadness. "Ah, then I have offended you. Tell me what I have done, and I will beg your forgiveness." "You are mistaken," he replied, fumbling for his hat. "You have done nothing, but I cannot help you. Perhaps my friend Russell might be of service." "Thank you," she said, and then burst into a shriek of laughter, wild and unsettling, which left Dyson scandalized and confused. He fled the house soon after, walking 5 long miles through streets that shifted from black to grey, and from grey to radiant gold as the sun rose. Here and there he passed stragglers from the night's revels, but none, he thought bitterly, could have wasted their hours more foolishly than he. By the time he reached home, he had resolved upon reform. No more Milesian tales, no more Arabian fantasies. He would subscribe to Mudi's library and confine himself to mild, harmless romances, stories that promised no horror, no scandal, and no shrieking laughter in the dark.
And thus the story ended. If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.